So, what is it about a campfire? Why do we do this? And why have we done it for centuries? Say the first thing about a campfire is the fact that it glows, that it shines, that it calls out to you. Human beings find eyesight to be the most pleasing of the senses because it delivers the most information in the quickest possible way. Just so, light is pleasing to us because it allows us to see. Moreover, a campfire is something to orient around. When we see a campfire, without ever having been told to do so, we instinctively circle up around it. Hopefully, you've got a nice evening like tonight where there's no wind and it goes straight up. But even so, even on a windy day, people will put up with the inconvenience of smoke in their eyes for the sake of standing around that fire. Instant cooperation, instant wordless communication. We are now all facing the same direction. But perhaps for me, the most salient point of a campfire is the orderly procession from potential to actuality, the orderly change in the wood. We don't often get to see things happen this gradually, yet this interestingly. We don't often get to see change at this scale. But the fire represents the perfect balance between order and chaos. It self-sustains, it allows itself to continue moving forward. We see that change, and that change reminds us that change is in fact possible, that our agency does make a difference, that we can do something like build a campfire for everybody to gather around, that what we do ultimately can have an effect, even if only slowly. The campfire calls to us, the campfire gives us something to gather around. The campfire is a physical manifestation of the process of change. And probably 1,000 more things which I haven't laid out here yet. So, why don't you come over here and tell me what you think about campfires? If you haven't picked up on it already, I'm on vacation and I am enjoying myself greatly. So, the link should be in the chat. If anybody wants any updates on the fire as we talk tonight, I'll just turn my webcam around and show it to you. But yeah, hoping that somebody will join me around our little virtual campfire here. The deal that I get to take advantage of that brought me here is there's this little old church just outside of State Park in Minnesota. And if I say one mass there on a Sunday, I get access to a little trailer home and a fire pit for an entire week, which is a great deal. So, got any campfire musings to share with us, Mark?
In fact, I do. I mean, unfortunately, they won't be sharing with you because you were there. So that's no fun. The Convivium event, I mean, you pick up these little things at these Peterson Sphere events. The one in DC last year, right? Oh, everyone get together and sing before we start talking. The talks, the conference.
Thank you, Michael Martin.
Thank you, Michael Martin.
Yep.
And then Convivium. Oh, campfires like every night. Like, oh, and the opening, come to my house, campfire and food. It's like, whoa. And then the whole Convivium event was eating together too, right? Like it was pretty next level stuff at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there's something enchanting and magical about campfires that, as lovely as your monologue was, cannot be captured by mere words alone. Right?
That's why I had the video as well.
No, it was quite good. It was quite. I was suspicious. I'm like, he's outside, isn't he? He's got this crackle. Your internet's a little crackly. I'm like, oh, he's definitely outside. That's what's going on here. But no, I love it. Yeah, there's some sort of I don't know. I guess I guess a fire what do I want to say plays with your participation in the world, right? It's a very
Mm,
playful thing, like by nature. It's plays with your eyes. It makes funny shadows. Like campfire shadows are weird. They're just strange, right?
mhm,
And the way it shifts and change because the hues and the colors, right, and the brightness all change all the time in unpredictable ways, I think is really, really deeply significant to why we enjoy the engagement with campfires as such. There's something to that that really, uh, I don't know, stimulates us in a relaxing way. Um,
yeah, which is a really odd balance right there.
mm, mm. No, it's super important, and what it does for events like Convivium is just like I don't know how to describe that. Like there's a there there.
Mhm,
I don't know what the there is. I mean, I know do more. It's like that's all good. Do more. That's about like I don't know what else to say about it. It's a very deep and rich sort of engagement, and I think that it's so important and fundamental. And when we're not doing it, we're losing the dimensionality, we'll say, of the world where people are living in a video game, right? And then they end up, which isn't necessarily something that has to happen, right? But they end up LARPing the world because they won't go out and sit by a campfire, right? Or they're not even attracted to it anymore because
mm,
they've lost. Now it's scary to them, right? And fire can be and should be scary because you can burn things down. But when you have a campfire, it's kind of in the name, right? You're camping. It's controlled. There's usually a ring of some kind containing the fire for you, and
the
so it's safe.
perfect, yeah, I guess it's also the perfect balance of danger and safety,
Right.
especially if you're a little kid, right? Because, it's like, it's dangerous, 5, 6 years old, it's hot, you can feel that pretty quickly. But, if your parents are cool, they allow you to throw stuff in there.
Hopefully, hopefully,
Yeah,
and then you get to see it consumed.
yeah,
Because fire is about slow consumption, and usually consumption is something that happens very, very quickly for us.
mhm,
And fire is this long, slow consumption where things transform visibly over a very long period of time.
mhm, mhm.
Sticks turn into ashes, and you don't even see the ashes really most of the time, except the ones that go up and fall on you, right, or around you. But you
That's
don't
why I'm
see
not
the
wearing my
majority of
clerics
it.
because they're mostly polyester, so
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I don't wanna go up in smoke.
Yeah, and it's not just visual, there's also the heat.
Mhm,
Right? And so to be close to it because things that come out of the dark will be less likely to do so on average, but also you'll be able to see them. So you can see in the dark. It's called fire, right? And then so it's a magical. It already has magical properties. It allows you to see in the dark where you normally can't see. It protects you from the dark. It warms you up, and there is this visual play that happens um, which is, as I said, challenging and relaxing somehow at the same time, which is just a strange thing to have happen with a fire in general, well, with anything. Um, but that's what sort of unfolds. So it's not only visual, and I think that's part of it. Is not mere visual engagement,
as
and
nice
that
as those YouTube videos of the fireplace are, and really, if you don't have a fireplace, that's like the next best thing right there. Um,
yeah.
it doesn't give you the full experience.
Right, right, and it may be better than nothing, but you're flat worlding big time there, and you're really missing
Lit
the essence.
literally, it's literally flat.
Mhm. That's the downside to well, I was having this conversation and, earlier today, in fact, and, this poor kid was like, he could not understand dimensionality. He couldn't understand 3 dimensions, which, I'm pretty sure we all live in. I mean, I might be wrong, but as far as I can tell, every human being lives in 3 dimensions. Every creature you interact with that, has a speech capacity this high is very interactive. Was an LLM, that's for sure. You can spot them a mile away if you know what you're doing. Um, he was just could not understand the z-axis. He said, "Oh, you mean what if you had 2 x-axes and 2 y-axes?" And I'm like, "No, that means you have 2 pieces of paper." And he just could not get it. And I was like, "No, no, no, there's a z-axis." And I think that's just too much engagement with the flat world, because the flat world only has an x and y. That's that's true. So fire, though, really disavows you of that by screwing up everything.
Mhm,
Like the
mhm.
shadows that come out of a fire cannot happen on a computer, even when you're taking, even when it's a video of a fire. Ooh.
Yeah, no, it can't cast those kinds of shadows. I mean, you see this in videos all the time, or movies, right? Like, you know, somebody's hacking at their computer, and then you see like a projection of the screen on their face, and like they have to
Yep.
do movie magic to do that because
Yep.
screens just sort of all of the colors just sort of blend together and just throw uh diffuse color out at you from a screen. It doesn't give you that projection the way the movies would have you do it. It's still not
Right.
saying directors shouldn't do it because it looks really cool
Right.
that it gives you an engagement with what's happening in the movie um, in a way that might not otherwise be possible. But yeah, yeah. No, you can't get those. And I bet you, even with, your RTX 4090 and the most advanced ray tracing software available, uh, you're still not going to quite get the full thing with reflections from fire shadows. Artificial light, they could probably get pretty close, but I don't know about fire. It just moves so much.
Right. Right. Well, then that is the issue. So, I mean, I can just show you how this works, because I know more about lighting than I ever wanted to. Um, when you don't have the lighting, I'm just gonna set all. Oh, that one's already done. When you don't have the lighting, that's what screens project on you.
Hmm.
You get red.
Hmm.
And when you have white light, this is mostly pure white lights, LEDs. Then your flesh tones come out.
Mm.
So you can't project a screen image on a person's face. It's not.
Turns them into a lobster, doesn't it?
There we go. Right. It
Yeah.
turns you into a lobster and not the Jordan Peterson good kind. I love
No,
it though. That's great. Yeah, it definitely needs a couple more pieces of wood there, Father.
we don't want to let it go
Definitely.
down.
Yeah.
There you go. Keep the fire burning. We'll see how much longer my battery lasts. This is it one of those fancy new Snapdragon chips? Uh, oh boy, they sure are
Oh yeah.
tempting though.
Yeah. What are you transmitting on? Is this a
Wi-Fi.
Chromebook? Yeah, but
Well,
is
this
it a
is
Chromebook or something? It's not a
no,
phone.
this is a Dell laptop.
Oh, that's the laptop. Oh, okay, you took the
Yeah, this
laptop.
is the
See, I get
laptop.
that's why I have the Chromebook. Actually, mine is dead. So I went out to buy a new one
DED
today,
dead,
and
huh?
well, I mean, that thing is probably 6 years old. It was
Yeah, Chromebooks. I don't think were ever meant for to be long for this world.
No, they really weren't. But
You
now they're
hand them to
super
a middle
expensive.
schooler and expect them to be destroyed.
You can buy a laptop for $150, and Chromebooks are more than that. So it's a weird world.
Okay, but is that laptop any good?
I can't tell anymore. 'Cause the problem is now there's 1,000 chips. There's 1,000 chips. This is like Intel alone they're shipping like 6 different types of low-end processors right now. And that's
Yeah,
like now, and then people are still shipping stuff from 2 years ago, and I can't tell. Like there's no way to know. It's and you don't often Like with the Chromebooks and even the low-end laptops, they won't tell you what kind of memory they're using, which actually matters for speed and things like more than the chip. The memory speed matters, right?
Mhm.
And so it's really hit or miss now because they hide everything.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I just heard that the new ARM-based processors from Snapdragon, like people with, we'll say, medium use will go weeks between charging it, just because
Yeah,
that ARM processor is so efficient.
that's
And it just
yeah.
blows my mind that you change the instruction set, you can get that kind of efficiency gains. But what do I know?
Well, yeah, they're changing more than the instruction set. So they have what are called low power cores. Intel has some of these too, but Samsung's really led the way on that stuff. And then
Mhm.
what happens is the low power cores get used in the low power applications, and because they have fewer instructions and they're more efficient anyway, because just newer tech like x86 instructions are um,
1978, right?
most some of them, yeah, but I mean, even the newer ones, like Intel was always the slowest and worst chip designer in the industry, and that is still true. Right, the fastest 386s, 486s, and Pentiums were all made by their rivals using their instruction set, right,
Mhm.
or copies of it, using a license to use the instruction set. And so, pretty much anybody who designed a chip that did the same thing as Intel did a better job. And people don't realize that because Intel ended up, for other reasons, putting everybody out of business, which is mostly wrapped around the computer monopoly wars of the 80s and 90s. And they did get brought up on monopoly charges, but Bill let Bill off. And so the two Bills collaborated to destroy the world. That's still my thing. So yeah, and I'm still pissed about that, by the way.
Oh, really? You're still angry about something?
It's
Shocking.
shocking. It's still destroying my life to this day. I woke up. I woke up this morning, and it came into my office, and I looked at my laptop, and I went, what, what's going on?" And my laptop had just the laptop screen, and I have two other monitors hooked up to it, and it was in the BIOS. And I went, "How did this happen?" Because
Usually
normally
you have
you
to
have to
hit
hit it.
delete.
Usually you have to hit a key to get into the BIOS. So Windows 11 uh, did something, rebooted itself, and set me into the BIOS. And then when I exited the BIOS and did the normal boot, Windows 11 acted as if it was a brand new machine, which of course threw me into a temporary panic. Well, I was like, oh no, did it
Oh, my
erase all
file's
my
gone.
data?
Yeah.
And everything was fine. So it's worse because it's just a bug about not knowing if it's configured, even though it's the one that rebooted my machine. And it could have looked on the disk and seen that it was configured, but unfortunately, the developers didn't think of that either. Apparently, because I don't know what's going on. Everyone in the computer industry is so unbelievably rampantly incompetent. It's sort of hard to imagine that it could happen. But we're there. It's not just computers; it's politics too. It's probably everything. People are just massively incompetent at everything now.
Like Dr. Peterson said, we'll never have a excess of competence in the world. Like that will never be a problem.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind so much if we had competence in the right places now, but I think actually part of it is Atlas Shrugged. Uh, I didn't know that was a real phenomena when I read the book, but it turns out that competent people often just say, "Screw this, I'm out," and they do whatever to make 10, 30 million dollars, and then they leave the industry, and then the industry suffers. It's like, well, that's not, and everybody that was in that industry and relies on that industry also suffers, but it takes a long time. It takes a very long time. But yeah, that was something I never realized, when I was younger. But yeah, is actually a factor. So
Well, I mean, honestly, that kind of makes being a priest nowadays fun, just because our numbers are dropping, and you may look at that and say, "Oh boy, this is going to be really complicated, and how are we going to keep things running?" Like, well, yes, there is, but you know, it also means that there's opportunities in that, opportunities in kind of the space that's being left as the biggest generation of priests we ever had, I think, in the world, probably, uh, partially just based on population growth, starts to retire out.
Mm.
You know, and yeah, the nice thing is that nobody's in this for the money anymore. It's
That's a plus.
you're only here if you want to be here, or maybe not only, but like that's going to be the majority of people. So
It's a
majority
good
of
filter.
priests.
That's a
Yeah.
good filter. This is why I never understood the argument from people who constantly told me that teachers were underpaid, that the solution is to pay them more money or something. And I'm like, I actually want teachers who want to be there so badly they'll starve to teach kids. Those are the teachers I want. I actually don't want teachers there because they get money. Like that, I don't understand that argument at all. I'm like, I hear what you're saying, and I'm looking for a downside to not paying teachers well, and you're not making the case you think you're making here.
I mean,
Also,
weren't you?
teachers were never underpaid when they said that to begin with, but whatever. They never count hourly wages. They count everything by yearly salary, which is a bogus thing to do.
Right. Yeah, there's something to be said for having summers off.
Right.
You were the one who
3
told me
months a year off.
about the daycare that started charging people for picking their kids up late, and that made more people pick their kids up late.
That's Freakonomics. That's like I
Yeah.
think that's the first story in the Freakonomics. So if you haven't read the Freakonomics series of books, you'll learn a lot about the world by reading that because it's like, oh my goodness, human behavior does not work anything like I thought it did. That's
Mm,
right. Yeah, they had a problem with kids being picked up late, so they decided to put a dollar value on it. The minute they did that, they got more people picking their kids up late because it was they could just pay $10 and buy convenience of picking your kids up late. Had exactly the opposite effect, and they never saw it coming. And it was just like, well, that was pretty stupid. And what that is that's drawing down, right? So you're taking a higher principle of living up to your obligation of paying so much to get so much daycare time, and you're drawing that interaction down into the realm of cash and saying, "Oh, well, you know what? Don't worry about this agreement we have that you're going to pick up your kids late. You can amend that agreement by giving me a $10 bill or whatever it was. I forget. It was an enormous amount of money, relative to the cost of the daycare, right? It's like, wow, that's a big premium for 15 more minutes. But the minute you do that, you get a flood, right? Because you've broken the boundaries of the thing and you've drawn it down into cash. Whereas before, the parents would pick up the kids because they felt guilty. And here's the irony. When you do that as the daycare person, everyone loses because now the parents stay later at work and stuff.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's not good for them either. Like
mm-hmm.
money does not by default, but it can corrupt. And that's one of those cases where money can corrupt.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this especially because conversations that you're missing on Bridges of Meaning, and a particular person is very intent on. I haven't followed this all that closely, but basically like a government subsidy for mothers, um, and it's like, yeah, I'm worried that we're going to get into those same kind of incentives, right?
No,
That
that's
like,
the Peterson cocaine story. Money was not good for this guy. Every time he got paid, he'd be gone for a day, 3 days, a week, and you'd find him in a ditch, hungover from his cocaine binge. Like, money is a very dangerous thing.
yeah, just giving it to people. But it's just I feel like that particular subsidy, while well intentioned, um, is more likely to cause problems down the road that we just really can't foresee. In a way that, as far as I can tell, our farm bills actually work pretty well. right? Like we still have farms. Now there is this movement towards bigger and bigger farms, and maybe that has to do with, the government subsidy. Basically, the government subsidizes farmers to
Yeah.
grow crops, right?
Right.
And what that actually, I think, ends up doing is it makes grain prices very cheap because we basically end up overproducing. And it's
Right.
like, if there's anything in this country that I would like to be very cheap, food would be one of them.
Right.
So
But
it's like I could see the logic of it.
yeah, but
And,
there's an easier way to think about this, especially at the federal level. The federal government is huge. It
Mhm.
should not deal with individuals ever, under any circumstances, right? It should deal with corporations because that's roughly the same scale. And when it does that, it can do some good. That's true. And
and
on
a lot of these
average,
farms I'm talking about are on the scale of a corporation, at least in terms of
they all
revenue,
are.
and also probably also in terms of their personnel. They all have hired hands.
All farms are corporations pretty much in the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so it works in a way that subsidizing motherhood wouldn't work.
Exactly, because it's too individual and small. If you subsidize a farm that just grew enough food for itself, that would immediately corrupt that, and that subsidy would do harm, for sure.
Okay,
It's
but
a scaling issue.
we haven't been doing that at scale for a while now. So
Right, it's a scaling issue. The government that operates at the scale of many people needs to deal with things that operate at the scale of many people. And it can't be 5 or 10. That doesn't work. Now you can make an argument that the state governments can deal at smaller scales, right? And that's usually how these programs work too. Like people don't realize most federal programs, not all, but most are state run subsidy programs.
Mhm.
So the federal government doesn't actually run them, or they do oversight, but the state runs them. So like
Mhm.
Medicaid is a good example. Medicare and Medicaid are run by the states. It may be federal funds and there may be federal oversight, but you don't go to the federal government for those things. You go to your state government for those things.
Mhm.
Right. And then there's this very complicated, easy to corrupt, easy to defraud system. That might be a hint as to why it's a bad idea, right? To disseminate the funds.
Mhm.
And the funds get disseminated various different ways through larger entities. Right. So the people that get the money are not the people that are getting the care. The people that get the money, the people that are giving the care. And so at least it's kind of sort of aimed in the right direction in terms of size and scale. But also evil, so don't do that. Most subsidy programs are just evil because it turns out that reducing things to money corrupts them. It's not the money that does it. The money doesn't corrupt anything. Money is a neutral actor in the world. What corrupts it is the reduction. And so
Right.
if
So
what you
you're kind of
do
cutting the telos off, or cutting it off from its proper telos, or
exactly. So what again? This is what I say all the time, right? Like you can't pay people to care, but you can pay caring people. The paying didn't change, right? What changed is the telos, right? Because if you pay people and you try to insert caring by giving them money, it doesn't work. But if in fact what you do is you find people that are caring and you pay them, it generally does work. And that's not 100% on either side, but it doesn't matter. The fact remains. It matters where your starting point is, right? And what your ultimate goal is. If your ultimate goal is to make more caring people, you have a bad telos. But if your ultimate goal is to make sure caring people have what they need to continue caring, then you have a good telos. It's not that hard, right? It's not really a mysterious thing that's hard to figure out. So I'm always puzzled when people don't know this thing. On the other hand, like I said a few hours ago, I learned that there are people that don't understand what 3 dimensions are and how it works, even geometrically. And
yeah.
presumably they went through high school, and I'm like, I mean, not that you need high school for that, but like you really don't understand the difference between X, X, Y, Y, and X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
or X and Y turned differently and X, Y, and Z. I mean, I apparently there are people like that out there, and boy, that explains a lot of behavior, doesn't it? I'm like, oh no, this problem is worse than I thought. That's amazing.
It amazes me that you find these people, or is it that these people find you? That's a very causality is a little question. Now, here's what I want to know: is let's take like a hotshot investment person on Wall Street. You know, sort of your extremely ambitious, I want to make a ton of money kind of guys. Um, they don't need to care about anything except money, I think, in that role, right?
Right.
Specifically because their goal is to make as much money for themselves as they can manage,
Yep.
and therefore the making as much money for this other person is the best way to do that. So you've got a different incentive structure, but it's like, I've never met anybody who admires these people.
Right. And generally, they don't need to care for anything but money. And they also generally don't. They don't have good relationships when they have any at all. And I mean, there's whole books written about this, right? There's The Wolf of Wall Street. What a movie, by the way. Not recommended. I mean, way
How
too
much
raunchy.
Like it's like 3 hours of degeneracy, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And the guys that effectively, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's effectively just a really good confidence man. Like he's a salesman. He's a good he's a really good confidence man. Now he was able to exact some of that out and give it to other people who were then able to sell penny stocks, which are generally a very bad idea. And that's how they, built their firm and made all the money for the hookers and blow. No, really, in the movie. So I don't necessarily recommend the movie. Jordan Belfort, I think that's his name. But like, I mean, like he was married and he gets a divorce and his whole life gets wrecked, and he's got like a Lamborghini and like he loses everything. But that's not because of the money at all, right? Because you look at somebody like Rockefeller, and he didn't have that problem. Like the guy was pious and tithes to the church when he was poor, all the way up until he was rich, and his family continues to do so throughout the generations at this point, which is, obviously the money doesn't corrupt.
I mean, he would be much closer to a CEO than like a investment broker, right?
No, Jordan Belfort was a CEO.
Sure, but he, I guess the kind of work that they were doing was very different, right? Like Rockefeller, he needed that ability to cooperate with people and to build the empire that he did.
No, he didn't. He wasn't trying to build an empire. He was just trying to help people. Like the thing that everybody like bashes the Rockefeller family. John D. Rockefeller saved the whales. No, really, saved countless hundreds of thousands of lives by standardizing not just oil but kerosene, which is kind of a big deal. Also, pretty much more or less invented gasoline in its current form, or not its current form, its previous form, before we gave farm subsidies to grow crappy corn that is useless and destroys engines and you shouldn't use in your car. And he, gave out, at this point, billions or hundreds of billions of dollars, and continues to do, like his legacy continues to do that. But also enables everyone to drive and everyone to have anything that moves and uses oil, like chainsaws and things like that. Like he single-handedly did all of that, and probably no one else would have done it if he didn't, for real. Right. And also revolutionized the transport of oil such that it was safer and cheaper at the same time. Like there's a couple of you know, and the money never corrupted him because he's still tied to the church.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is, there's a study out about this, and I don't know where it is. There might be more than one now, but like him in particular, but other people too who were philanthropists. The ones who made the money and built the corporations, when they run the charities with their own money, those charities are more efficient. And the generations that come after them, or people who take over the charities after them, the charities never run as well.
Mhm.
That might tell you something about the connection of being the type of person that can run something like that, and not being the type of person that can, but being put in that position. And you know, but and money is its own monster. So like maybe if somebody gives you $100 billion to run a charity, you don't have to do a very good job, and the charity will be fine. Probably true. Also,
Quantity has a quality all its own.
all its own, right?
Yeah.
Also, somebody's got to make the $100 billion, buddy, and those people are far better at running the charity than you ever be if you
Mhm.
didn't make the $100 billion for the charity. And so
Mhm.
that fact alone, and you can look this stuff up. Like everyone's lazy, they won't do it, but it's available. That fact alone shows it can't be the money. Can't be. The money has nothing to do with it. It's totally neutral in the equation. You know, why do we have libraries in the United States? Carnegie, right? Like it's that simple. Like there's no other explanation. It wasn't the government, by the way. Hint, not the government. Right? All these government things were not the government in the beginning. And usually the government took them over, like subway systems, where they immediately destroyed it and made it worse. Like immediately. Go government. Yeah, not a fan.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, so you think that what made Rockefeller effective, in addition to, let's say, some innate qualities that he didn't earn, was his orientation towards, no, I want to do this for oil, let's say, all of our energy production, because that's the best way of running things.
No, I don't think he had anything like that in mind. He was just a really pious Baptist from day one. He just wanted to make the world a better place.
And so
Eh,
the way
the whole
the
thing.
way the means he went about making the world a better place was, hey, let's figure out a way of speaking about all of these fuel oils that's standardized, that's properly measured, so people know what's in this canister
Right.
and they know how it's going to behave, and
It
we're going
was
to
probably
transport it in a
no,
certain way that it's much safer than it
it
has been
doesn't
done.
no. See, this is the over rationality. You don't even need to do that. You can do that. Like you can go, "Oh, this is unsafe. We need to standardize it." And that might have happened, but I don't think so actually and I got to do more research for sure, but I haven't done a deep dive on him. I haven't done any research on him in a while, but I haven't done a real deep dive on like the beginning. But get this, if you just form a corporation, we'll say for the purpose of betterment or whatever. Now, he's in this milieu of corporations popping up all over the place. You got to remember there's all these changes that happen right around the turn of the century there, right at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, where the we would now call it the top 1%. It wasn't even back then. We bitch about the 1%. Yeah, that's twice as big as it was in the 1800s. There wasn't no 1%. All the wealth was concentrated in like well, in the United States up until the up until 1913 or 1919, I forgot. All the money was in 12 families. 12. That ain't 1% of the population at that time.
That's not
So,
even 0.1%.
right. And
Yeah.
worldwide, I think it was 0.1%. The fact that we have a 1% now is actually an order of magnitude improvement, and everyone bitches about it. And I'm like, you guys all suck and you're stupid. And like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Read a book, like a book, one once ever about history. My goodness. So what happens is everyone's starting these businesses and like watch Downton Abbey. Like it like you can kind of get a sense. Watch the first like 3 episodes of Downton Abbey. You kind of get a sense. I mean, they use the disaster of the Titanic as the turning point. Fair. I wouldn't use that. There was a lot more going on. But if you got to pick one thing, that's the biggest single thing probably, right? That causes the turn. I'm more of a, Age of Gnosis, the rise of materialism guy,
Hard to
right?
show that on film, though.
It's hard to show. Well, what leads up to the Great War, right? Because that's really what it is. So what happens is everyone's starting businesses as a way of moving up the ladder, particularly in the U.S. Hey, Valerie,
Hey.
where the money is freer in the U.S. than it is in Europe by an infinite amount. Effectively, the only free capitalist country in the world at that time is the United States. The idea of capitalism didn't even actually manifest anywhere else. So all of these people are going from zero wealth to actual wealth in a way that's impossible in Europe to this day. And so what happens is if you start a business in that kind of environment where there is free and easy capital, and it was just floating around, the number of car companies, for example, in the late 1800s, all of which were in Massachusetts, not Detroit, is amazing. Like, and they just come and go and come and go and come in, bicycle companies and car companies and motor companies, things like, electric motors, things like that. They just come and go, come and go. Springfield, Mass. The history of Springfield, Mass is fascinating because a lot of the companies were there. But if you build a business, let's just say on oil, the new discovery, right? Ooh, this black gold thing coming out of the ground, right? What's going to happen is, in order to run the business efficiently from a money perspective, you will standardize the oil. If you're smart, the dumb people didn't, obviously. So was Rockefeller thinking strictly about business? He might have been, the result would have been the same. Or was he thinking about the greater good? Because again, he tied to the church even when he was poor. Like, he was a very pious Baptist. I don't know. Does he know? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing is these things can just kind of pile up if you're properly oriented, right? So it's like, I'm trying to come up with an analogy for
Well,
it.
this is the self-similar fractal nature of reality. And this is why when people get upset at things like corporations, I'm like, corporations do more good for you than you can imagine. Your life would be miserable without them. I don't know why you're upset at corporations. You can be upset at Microsoft because they're all scumbags and should burn in hell immediately. But that I can make that case. I can't make that case for a bunch of other corporations. A bunch of other corporations are doing great work in the world, and without them, we'd be miserable. Like my electric company. I love I have a co-op. But like my electric co-op in particular is freaking awesome. I'm getting a brand new water heater
down in South Carolina.
I'm getting a brand new water heater on Tuesday. I'm not sure if it's going to cost me nothing because I've been paying them $3 a month for a whole 8 years, or if I'm going to have to pay a whole $250 installed. I also don't care because I've bought water heaters in the past, and let me tell you, the installation cost was $250, and that was years ago. I don't know what even down here, I don't know what the installation cost would be, but I guarantee you I wouldn't also get the water heater delivered at that cost. So like, I'm thrilled with my electric co-op right now, and all I've been paying them is $3 a month for a few years.
Are they just doing like a regular electric one, or are they going to do a hybrid with a heat pump?
Everything's electric down here. Nobody bothers. Electricity down here is so absurdly cheap.
You can do hybrid water heaters that have a heat pump, so it'll run kind of like your air conditioner does, get cold on one end and hot on the other.
Too expensive.
That's too expensive. Okay, because the operating costs on that are very low because of the efficiency of the heat pump. Plus, it would cool your house in the summer, which is cool.
The manufacturing costs are high. So
the
like
manufacturing costs are high.
Right. Yeah. And so like people don't look at ROI, return on investment, right? Like, so like I could get solar down here, and solar works really well down here.
Yeah, because you have the sun.
No, we have ridiculous sun. Like the sun down here has nothing to do with the sun in the Northeast. Nothing. I don't even think it's the same ball of fire because it's that different. Like it's really that different. The amount of time you spend up, the amount of heat, in the sun, the amount of the time to burn in the sun, like it all changed. Well, we did that. We did the experiment in Florida. Remember, Father?
We both got roasted. Yes.
We both roasted our freaking backs of our legs. Took a week and a half for that to heal, and we treated it right away. the day it happened,
I was like,
I ran
Mark,
out to the store and got some
aloe.
aloe at your suggestion. Yeah, but for me to buy solar, okay, it's something like $30,000. Could probably do the whole house, and battery units and all that. That's something like 17 years of electricity.
Wow.
And the solar ain't going to work that well for 17 years. So
Yeah.
it makes no sense to buy solar here.
Well,
None.
the batteries won't work that well. I don't know anything about the solar cells, but the batteries
the
wear
cells-
out. Yeah.
The cells wear out way. So the downside is the cells last longer up north because the sun isn't as strong. Yeah, the cells don't last as long down here.
Oh my.
Oh, you people don't get it. I'm like, no. There's this massive trade-off that goes in the wrong direction that you don't want. And I didn't look into, and maybe I should, but no, this would be a pet project. It doesn't make any financial sense. But I should look into, because this does work in the north, the water-based solar, where you're using it for hot water and heat. Because that would work extraordinarily well down here. Because then your battery is water.
Yeah, water is a battery. That would work. I know somebody in Florida who uses that in the winter to heat his pool. And
everybody
does.
Well. In Florida, everybody's got a pool heater for free.
And it's like, all you need is a pump and make sure the dang thing doesn't leak.
Pumps are cheap. And all you need is a black bladder. Not very large, because the sun is so powerful, even in the winter. It's pretty strong. Yeah. And I go up north in the winter, and I'm like, did someone turn on a light bulb? And down here, even in the dead of winter, when you're outside and the sun's out, because you can feel it.
Alrighty, I'm afraid I need to do a little change of scenery here because my laptop just told me it's about to die. So I'm afraid that the campfire stream's going to end. But I'll be back.
Okay.
All right. He'll be back. How's you doing, Valerie? It's good.
Doing all right. Plugging along. Yeah. The Write of the Meaning book has gone live.
Great.
We had a bit of a technical issue. We're still waiting for it to resolve. The print version was supposed to come out on the same day as the ebook on the 31st, but it's still it was going to either show up later last night or today. It hasn't shown up yet today, so maybe tonight. So I'll probably do another announcement on Discord and all the social media platforms and say the print book is now available. But we're getting pretty nice reviews.
Good.
Feedback from people that they're enjoying the book, so that's kind of nice.
Oh, that's great.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. How are you doing? What have you been up to?
All kinds of things. Book clubs. We just got done with the Moby Dick book club earlier today, so that was yeah.
What was some of your takeaways from the book? Your perspectives.
Well, we're only up to chapter 45 or something. Is that what we finished?
Oh.
No, I mean, it's a fascinating book so far. There's a lot of interesting references, and he does a lot of playing with writing as such, right? With the narrative structure, the narrative perspective, a lot of symbolism, right? A lot of contrast. Moby Dick's a very high contrast book.
Interesting.
Most of it's very high contrast stuff. It's very hard to understand by yourself, so I would not recommend reading it on your own.
Okay.
In fact, probably most good books you shouldn't read on your own, just because they're very, good books are hard to understand. And you always get more out of it when you hear what other people see that you don't, because that always happens.
Yeah.
So, especially with a book like Moby Dick, there's so much there; it's impossible to absorb it by yourself. And then on Saturdays we got the Language Creation Book Club, So we've been
Ah,
cranking through that.
very
And
cool.
yeah. Well, people seem to like our language of creation better than some of the other ones that have come before, which is nice. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm what I'm doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I have some technical questions. I know I'm going to bore the audience. I don't know how many people are actually watching, but probably a
That's all
few.
right. You can bore them all. It'll be
Okay.
fun.
Um, so I'm just doing my little YouTube channel, um, and gonna start doing interviews with people soon. And I know it's kind of polite to do video chapters, but I am like clueless how you do that. I can look up the technical things, but how do you decide for you? How do you decide like what to call the different video chapters?
I don't.
Or
I'm lazy. I let Google do it.
oh,
It does
okay,
it
cool.
automatically.
So I can let Google do it. That would be nice.
Pretty
Okay,
much, yeah.
all right,
I,
that
I
sounds fine.
suggest having an editor. I have an editor for my channel.
An editor? Yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
one yet. I'm just a
You should
little
find an editor because that'll make life easier. Yeah, I mean, trying to do your own videos by yourself is you only have your own perspective, so it's very limiting.
yeah. I'm
All the successful channels too. They don't tell you this. All the successful channels have teams, at least 2 people. They're all of them, every
cool.
Mhm.
single one of them. Yeah, I've
And
looked
it's
into
not
this.
just a camera guy. Sometimes it's like a combination camera guy editor.
Oh,
A
okay,
lot of them have 3 or 4 people behind the scenes.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'll have to just grow slowly, and hopefully somebody might come along who might want to help me.
Oh, I get
So,
Yeah.
people emailing me all the time offering to help me grow my YouTube channel.
oh yes,
That's a little different, Father.
yeah,
I think they want
that's
money.
they want money, and I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of money.
Well, and I have no
I don't.
idea. I have no idea if they're running a legitimate business. Like
Mm,
maybe if I promise to share some profits, they'd be like, "Okay, here's how we're going to grow your channel, and we should have you monetized within a month, and I want 40% of that cut." But like maybe that's how they run it.
mm,
But I haven't responded to any of them because I'm not a YouTuber.
yeah,
My editor is free, fortunately. So I'm quite
cool.
fortunate. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very lucky. And I had an editor from the beginning, which really helps.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Very
It's
cool.
a team effort. I can't do things by myself, so I don't even try.
Yeah, it's good to have support.
It's required.
Yeah.
If you want to do work, you gotta have help. And you may buy that help. You may have that help because you have a computer which you bought, but
Mm.
like you didn't build it, right? So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
help.
That's
People don't
yeah.
think about that, but like that's help. Your electricity that you're not producing, that somebody helped you with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Our outrageous capacity for cooperation.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to be on
Oh, it's
planet Earth.
Yeah.
it's wild once you realize
Like
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 how
like take
cooperative
this.
things are.
I was a seminarian and I go camping at Lake Itasca State Park in Minnesota. And we go to church on Sunday, and there's this little church on the north entrance of the park, right? They hand out a flyer to everybody on their way in, the little history of the church. There's just a little community of people who keep this church open Memorial Day to Labor Day,
Oh.
right? And it's not open, and it's all run by guest priests, and the people who run it have to hope that priests will show up. They give us this little double wide trailer to stay in, so that's how they entice us. But anyway, I saw that early on in seminary, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. This is a
Oh,
great idea,
cool.
right?
Cool.
And we had people from all over the place show up for mass today. Right? Like we don't really know each other. I saw one family that I knew from West Fargo, and Father Robert, who's here with me, he saw a family from his parish, but other than that, it's all strangers. We all
Huh.
celebrated mass together. And it started mostly on time. It's Labor Day. Our church was very full. They had to put out a bunch of other chairs, and that kind of delayed the start of mass
Ah.
time.
Wonderful.
It's not that big a church, so you get 147 people in there. It's packed full.
Wow.
And we came from a bunch of different parishes, but hey, the Roman Missal's the same wherever you go. At least it should be. And we were able to just do it, and
That's cool.
yeah. And I did the chanting, and everybody chanted back. So
Nice.
love to see it.
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah. So it's just outrageous capacity for cooperation. Because we just found this on Google, that one year, and it's like, oh, that's way better than driving into Park Rapids, quarter of the distance.
Cool.
Wow.
So it's in your state then?
Minnesota. I'm from North Dakota, but
okay.
I'm on the east. All the really good lakes are in Minnesota. It's the
Okay.
land of the 10,000 lakes. So
Right. Yeah. Very cool. I'm glad you're able to do that.
Oh, it's a great deal. Absolute great deal. I'm going to say mass anyway. You just put people in front of me,
Yeah.
Father, I bet if you just went to a random person's house, you'd say mass every day.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I actually had to put a little work in to get a homily together. So that's a little extra work. But great deal. Great deal. Love it. Love being a priest. It's great.
Very cool.
And then they took me out for breakfast, like,
oh, nice.
What? Outrageous.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right.
How long has this parish been around?
Oh, I I don't have the history sheet with me.
Oh, okay.
I think it was built sometime in the 40s and the 50s, and it was always kind of like a bit of a satellite to another parish.
Ah.
And then I think it was like 24 years ago, the bishop's like, guys, we're really running short on priests. You don't get that many people here during the winter months. I don't know if we can keep this running. And so the people were like, well, what if we were able to recruit priests to just say mass during the summer? Because that's when lots of people are here. And the bishop's like, if you guys can manage that, and here's kind of the boundaries and the parameters for it, then that's great. And turns out that all worked well.
Oh, Laura says hi, Valerie.
Hi, Laura.
Nice to see you making the rounds. Also, hey, Ron. How's it going?
Nice.
Yeah.
Hi,
We got
Neil.
another bald man on the stream. Always good to
I'm
see
not. I used to be a hippie with long hair. Sad.
Well.
Oh, you've learned. You've grown. Excellent.
Before the stream started, me and Father Robert were listening to Deja Vu by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and it had the song Almost Cut My Hair Today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Oh, man.
That's a good one. I love Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yeah, it's a magnificent album. I don't know how the hippies wrote it, but they did.
Well, they probably wrote it stoned, but that's not important right now. So
Yes.
first time I just wanted to say hi to you guys. I've seen you hit and miss before. So I have this is just a random question. I'm a Jewish guy who got saved at a pop festival 23 years ago.
Okay.
So coming from that, and I love Catholic folks and Orthodox. And my question is there ever any crosstalk between Orthodox and Catholics with the saints? Let's say Padre Pio, or I believe his name is Father Seraphim, who I've just got turned on to, Seraphim Rose. And I have reasons to ask this. Are there ever times when a person not from your tribe will talk to a different tribe? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Sure. So we'll take the questions one at a time. We'll say mutual recognition of saints, and everything before the schism is fine. between Catholics and Orthodox, right? So, like
Right.
I've heard, Richard Rowland say wonderful things about Saint Gregory the Great, who was a Roman pope.
Mhm.
So that's usually not typically all that controversial. Sometimes you'll see like the Thomas Aquinas versus Gregory Palamas. Who had the best understanding of divine simplicity, and those debates can be fun as far as they go, but I don't know if they really go all that far. But then sometimes, people have rather harsh things to say about each other, and that can make them a little bit hard to canonize, I guess. So there's a very interesting parish in Minnesota. It was constructed sometime in the past 30 years because they had outgrown their old space. And the pastor's a real interesting guy. He had this great idea of building a church that was East meets West, and like trying to bring the both of them together in the art and architecture. And so there's a lot of icons alongside like statues and crucifixes, And I think it's mostly well done, because honestly, as long as you've got like the crucifix, the altar, and the tabernacle all in the right spot, most everything else will fall into place automatically. But they had Orthodox icon painters come in, and they allowed them to put, I guess, no, or were they Eastern Catholics? Okay, now I've got the story. They allowed them to put a newer saint in there, like it was like Francis of San Francisco or something like that. Who I'd never heard of, right? And I don't think he's a Catholic saint. I think he's an Orthodox saint, but they allowed him to put him in that church. So that's like the one thing that I've actually seen where it's like, yeah, a little bit of recognition on the Catholic end of a potentially very holy man in San Francisco, of all places.
Mm.
And then your second question was about ecumenical dialogue.
No, but I mean, I have reasons to ask this. I know saints show up to people, yeah, like dead ones. They're like Mary or whoever, and
Mm-hmm.
would I'll just use the names I know best, and I'll try to explain it that way. Would Father Seraphim ever show up to a Catholic person, or would Padre Pio show up to an Orthodox?
I've never
And I
heard
don't
of
have
that.
a dog in this fight.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never heard of that,
Okay.
but it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah, how would they know?
Okay.
That's the
Especially
problem.
if, like, Gregory Palamas shows up to Padre Pio, and Padre Pio doesn't know who he is because he's not a theologian.
Do
Right.
saints identify themselves when they do show up?
I mean, it always seems like when Mary shows up, she's showing up to like some simple peasant children and it's just like a beautiful lady who invites them to pray the rosary together. That was both the apparition at Lourdes and the apparition of Fatima. And it isn't until like a few times that she shows up, she identifies herself. So it's like, yes, but like they do it kind of on their own terms, and it kind of depends on the saint, right? So like if I had a vision of Venerable Fulton Sheen, I would know what he looks like because he was on television, so and we've got photographs of him. But like if I were to have a vision of St. Peter, it'd be like, okay, you'd better go with like the traditional iconographic portrayal, or the guy from The Chosen, because otherwise I'm not going to recognize you.
I love it.
Well, these visions are really interesting because they're filtered through our intellects, so they get conditioned in that way, which is part of why they're not infallible and why general revelation closed at the death of the last apostles, because even if a saint does show up, and even if we are really holy, we can still get it wrong, like St. Catherine of Siena did with the Immaculate Conception. So,
okay, no, that answers my questions. I am Protestant. I'm Jewish. It's pop festival. Hear the gospel. Boom. Saul to Paul. And a couple years ago, something happened that, like Jesus, I know Jesus we're cool with. And I was going through a bad time and somebody showed up and helped me in a blink of an eye, in a very loving way, never said their name. And it confuses me, not in a bad way, but it can, and I'm like, dude, I've seen weird, but this is like weird. Like,
Mhm.
and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get me a priest and ask him. And if Mary shows up to someone and she does not identify herself, actually, I should, no, let me rephrase that. If someone, let's say on the home team, if you have Satan and God, this person is good because they're helping you. It's beautiful, true, and good. You're in pain and suffering, and then in a moment, you're okay, and you're back on base. And you're like, who was that masked man? Except it's a lady. And all that for me that was described was overlooked and infinitely capable.
That sounds like Saint Philomena.
I have no idea, dude. I've done drugs, and I mean, this is more confusing than any drug I've ever done.
Mhm.
But so, who is she? And sorry for interrupting. I'm all ears, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Well, that's just the modus operandi of Saint Philomena right there. So basically, we don't know a
And
daggone thing about Saint Philomena. We
so,
found her tomb in the 19th century, and it had, bones, as a tomb does, and it had like the name Philomena, and it had like Christian symbolism on it. And then people are like, and I guess there was probably some archaeological evidence that this came from Roman times.
okay.
And people just started praying to her, and like miracles just started happening left and right. And so that was how St. John Vianney covered for all of his miracles, as he said, well, I was actually just praying to St. Philomena, and she was the one who got you this favor. So you pay attention to her. You don't pay attention to me. So I'm not saying that I know exactly what happened, but like the saint that we know nothing about, but who gets things done, sounds like Philomena to me.
It's interesting. Because like I have a lot of Catholic friends and I love them dearly. And I'm like, I tell them this, they're like, oh, I was Mary and you should become Catholic. And I'm cool, like I would expect that. But it just didn't sit. Something's like, dude, when it was Jesus, it was confusing and it blew my world up, but I knew it was him. And I'm like, fine, let's go. Again, somebody's helped me.
Mhm.
And I never want, I've been fighting saying it's Mary because it's just something in me is like, no, you know what I
But
mean?
it doesn't have to be though. That's the thing. I mean, I think one of the problems, I mean, I know many lovely Protestants, but one of the problems is they don't have tools to understand a bunch of stuff. Like the tools don't exist. They didn't grow up with them. They don't have them in their theology, right? Things like the idea of the divine feminine, right? That would be Mary
Yeah.
for Catholic and Orthodox. Weird, random coincidence, I'm sure. That's the spirit of the divine feminine. Right? You already got the spirit of the divine masculine. That's the Father. It's not hard, right? But also like that's kind of a lot that's missing. But you're also missing the saints, right? Which is, for me, the way I explain this. Why did this happen 2 days after I wrote this down? I don't know. The exemplification of important values and virtues. And saints tend to have one or two things, right, that they're known for, whatever, right? And those tend to be either virtues or values or both, right? And so the Cathodox, as I like to call them, like they have tools to deal with that. Like they have exemplifications of that in the saints, for example. And so does it matter which saint? Not really. Like, can you relate maybe the task with the saint? Maybe, but like what difference does it make? Like you receive some grace somehow, a miracle somehow. Does the vessel really matter? Was it a clay pot or a gold chalice? Don't care, man. I still got the thing, right? To some extent. But then they also don't have the symbols, which are, I describe it as multiple ways of relating.
Instead of saying they don't have the tools, you should
The
say,
Protestant,
I
the
don't
Protestant,
have the tools. Like,
the Protestant tradition doesn't have the tools, right? Tradition.
I
that's
don't
like-
have the tools, and that's why we're talking.
Right, because you're not Catholics. Like the
Hey,
Catholics and the Orthos have those tools. That's
Yeah.
what those churches give you. That's
Yeah.
there's a richness and a fullness there, right?
No, I
It
got
isn't not in the things that aren't those two things. Maybe the
Mhm.
exception of Anglicanism. Nobody else can give you those tools. They don't have them. They haven't kept them.
I want to ask you, Mark, what would you think of just throwing the petition up there? Hey, lady, that was pretty great. What's your name?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
that's
I
happened.
promise you, I'm not just trying to trick you into becoming Catholic.
No. I like you guys. Like, I know I know when I'm being reeled in or gigged or a sales pitch. This ain't that. This is just the opposite. This is exactly the nice space to have a dialogue. And that, we're fine. In fact, thanks. The reason I'm so cautious is because I take it, one, really serious, and I know you guys do too. But when she said, or it wasn't even her, it was another voice describing her, and it feels good even now saying it. Infinitely capable or overlooked, infinitely capable. Like it. And so the infinitely capable is what I got a little bit like, huh? But when you said the saint, I can't remember her name. Philomena. Can you please give me some more, background on her and help me understand? Because
I've told you everything we know.
okay,
We found her bones. We have her name. Evidence that this comes from the Roman times, and there was Christian symbolism in her burial chamber. They carved a cross or a fish or something like that. And people started praying to her, and miracles started happening.
Okay. I get, and I'm glad you're a priest, because then I think you'll understand my concern. When I heard the description infinitely capable, I'm like, that's, for me, this is the Protestant flags going, well, that's only God.
Well, infinity can be spoken of in more than one way.
I'm listening.
So there's a certain sense that, God is infinitely capable, we could say omnipotent, because he can do anything. There's also a sense where infinity is just sort of not set yet and can receive anything.
Okay.
So if you were to have, let's say, perfect spiritual feminine receptivity, they would be capable of receiving any grace from God and bearing that however he carries on with that. And so there's a certain infinity about potential as well. So if we had something like pure matter, right, pure formless potential, that would be infinitely capable of receiving form.
Interesting. Okay, I'm tracking. Gotcha. I guess the Protestant part of me is going, danger, Will Robinson. Only God is omnipotent and and that's why I was stopping, hard stop. I'm going, it's not Mary because she's a created being, and maybe what I first amongst, I'm trying to regurgitate everything I've learned. Like, she's very high up, but still a created being.
Right.
And when I heard infinitely capable, that to me is what
So
that. Mhm.
let's think about the church, right? Because when Catholics look at Revelation chapter 12, the great sign of the sky, the woman clothed with the sun, moon under her
Mhm.
feet, on her head a crown of 12 stars. You ask a properly trained Catholic interpreter of scripture, say, is that Mary or is that the church? And say, well, yeah, it's both, right?
Okay.
So what if we just look at the church, right? And you know, we're imagining the church not according to its members, but according to the action of the Holy Spirit in her.
Okay.
Right? Is there any grace that the church cannot receive from God?
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Because it's the Holy Spirit, the action of the Holy Spirit
Mhm.
that's doing this in the church. It's like, well,
Mhm.
obviously, the Holy Spirit's going to be effective when He decides to move according to His own plans and His own intentions, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
and us, the members of it, who are blessed to receive this inspiration,
Mhm.
will follow it. At least the parts of the church, the body that are paying attention and are ready to go along with it. So
Mhm.
it's a different kind of infinity. It's a different quality of infinity, but it's still, that's the trouble with the term infinity, is that it's a negation. It's a negation of finitude. So you
Right.
got to be careful
Mhm.
with it. Infinitely capable. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like that's symbolism. What you just outlined, Father, is that's the symbolism. Like that's one of the tools you get in Catholicism that you
No.
probably can't get in Protestantism. And it's interesting because math reproduced all that. So I
Man.
don't remember the name of the book, but there's a book about this where it's some famous mathematician, I'm sure, and I
Mhm.
apologize, it's probably 16 the last time I heard about this. But what happens is they posit a hotel with an infinite number of rooms. And then they
Mhm.
proceed through the book to say, if you have a hotel with an infinite number of rooms, what can you do? Well, it turns out that you can have an infinite number of people come into the hotel, and you can add an infinite number of rooms without moving any of the people already in the hotel around and still
Mhm.
give them rooms. Huh? Right? So
Right.
there's multiple infinities. So even
Right.
in mathematics, in pure mathematics, they
Mhm.
understand that infinities aren't one thing universally equal. There's
Gotcha.
different types of infinities. So when you say infinitely capable, you're not saying
Mhm.
infinity, right? You're saying infinitely capable. So it's infinity bounded by capability. And that's
Okay.
one aspect of the world. Capability is one aspect, right? Knowledge might be another aspect. I don't particularly like that term, but like infinite knowledge is not the same as infinite capability, but they're both infinite.
You're helping. Go ahead, please.
I just, capability is just a funny word. Maybe I've said it too much, but I want to look up the etymology of it now.
No, that's fine. It's it. I mean, it was such a simple sentence. Overlooked, infinitely capable.
Mm,
3
yeah,
words.
that's a nice mystery. Yeah, and
Yeah.
when appearances happen, usually, uh, if you get like a vision or something, you need that interpreted for you. Like it's not going to be given. Like this is another sort of Protestant thing. They tend to think, oh, we can interpret things by ourselves, like that's sola scriptura and all the other stuff. Like
Right,
it's
there's
me.
the whole thing
But
about interpreting tongues and stuff that you need somebody else to interpret the tongues. So,
in one denomination,
oh,
right? Yeah,
oh,
there's all kinds of things in the different denominations, right?
yeah,
But it doesn't have the richness and the fullness of the understanding and the authority that can do the interpretation for you.
yeah.
Father Eric can handle it though. There we go.
Capax, able to hold much, broad, wide, or roomy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's
That's
hysterical.
that's that's different than potestas, which is power.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So saying something that's infinitely capable, if we're gonna like dig back into the and it's an adjectival form of capere, to grasp, lay hold of,
Grasp.
take, catch, undertake, take in, hold, be large enough for, comprehend. Um, so yeah, infinitely capable is just It's a different sort of infinity, I think, than infinitely powerful.
That's more like the hotel with the rooms that I just described. Very, very awkward indeed. Also, this thing. This is how
It
these
reminds
happen.
me of a very hospitable Borg cube. Just,
Yeah.
just.
I don't know that I'd mix those two, but I like it.
I thought you. No, I appreciate you guys spending time on this. I think you'll understand where I'm coming from when I say I don't want to screw around with this.
Right.
Um,
No. Reverence is the appropriate posture.
Dude, I am a goofball, and that's I like it because I can go wherever you guys want to go, or at least I'll try to. But in some things, I'm like, dude, I just don't want to screw around at all. But I will say, and this happened a couple years ago, and it's still with me. It's a living encounter. It feels so good. And I've decided, I've gone from what is this UFO to, okay, you're cool. And we're, like, I don't know who you are, but you're absolutely invited. I just want to know, like, and I'm like, who are you? Like, I think that's even biblical. Like Saul, when he gets knocked off the donkey, like, okay, who are you, Lord? Like, okay, I know you're God and I know you're cool, but you got a name to go with that?
Mm-hmm.
And and more so because it really is off my paradigm. It's off my grid. I know miracle signs and wonders. Because I needed them. That's how I get. And then to have something make me go, what are we looking at? You're pulling a pretty good hat trick, at least for me. I've talked to other priests, and there's have you ever heard of Encounter Ministries from Michigan? Father Matthias Thielen.
Mm-hmm. I know him.
Okay, great guys. I talked to I think he was a Franciscan. He's one of the intellectual priests. They're teachers. Is it not that? I mean, you got
Sacred Heart Seminary.
It's up in the Michigan area. It's a Protestant college school with a Catholic priest on campus as the spiritual counselor. Great guy.
Hillsdale? Not Hillsdale.
It's up. It's I think Michigan or Minnesota, one of the two, but I think Michigan. It's a small private Protestant college with a Catholic priest, because I think, I accidentally met him a few weeks ago. He's spiritually, he's got his goods together, and I trusted him. I'm like, well, who do you think it is? And he goes, I think it's Mary. He didn't stamp it, but I'm like, why do you think that? He goes, well, it just sounds like her. It's like, he wasn't deep, and he wasn't trying to say, thus saith the Lord or anything. And he was a cool guy about it. And because I'm Jewish, we prove all things right by saying no. And until you can convince me otherwise, it ain't. And that's kind of the process I'm going through now. And I had one friend who so far the advice that's helped a lot next to this conversation, he goes, a Catholic fellow named Neil, who's on Grail Country in Little Corner. He goes, well, just rest in the mystery. Just enjoy it. And I'm like, I can do that. But when I saw you guys live stream, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to jump in here. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah. And I'm delighted you did.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Because I seen you, Captain Jack. You had the hat. What is I can't mark. Yeah, you had like a captain's hat on and like a steampunk patch or something. I'm like, all right, this guy ain't wrapped too tight.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, there it is. There it is. No, that's cool. So I knew you guys were like not like you guys skated on the thin ice sometimes, and that's fun. But just having, I'm like, dude, having reasonable people to talk about this with, it's a valuable thing. And while I got you on, let me try to write her name down. The lady you had
Philomena.
mentioned. Let me put up something new here. And what did you say her name was?
Philomena, spelled with a PH at the beginning. Let me see if I can.
Okay. Philomena.
Gotta have a Wikipedia page. All the good saints have one.
If not, there's one on Catholic.org.
Saint Philomena. And I guess what's really weird is I'm looking for validation, which I might not be able to get from anybody. I might just have to deal with the fact this is something for me to chew on and wrestle with and let God reveal it to me at the proper time.
Well, you might be able to get validation, just not in the way you want, right? Like you
That's
might be
interesting.
able to know by participating. And this is something that's sort of foreign to the Protestant mind. Like you can know things by going to church and just being in church and participating in liturgy, and then all of a sudden these things start to make sense. So like if you have a vision and you can't place it in the world, that wouldn't be surprising unless you had a framework to do it in. And then so you need that framework. And maybe that framework isn't one visit or one priest consultation or whatever. Maybe it's a year of actually participating in the practices, and that's what changes your orientation in the world, right? Much like we were talking about in the beginning with the campfire, right? Your orientation in the world gets changed as a result of looking at the campfire, because there's all these aspects to a campfire, especially in person, right? That actually make a difference. And then we'll say biblically, know through participation, if you want to use fancy Vervaeke words, right? Through the participation, and then you don't need a name. You don't need an answer. You can just receive the grace in a comfortable way, and everything just kind of works.
I think I might be there what you're talking about. And I like that. When I went to church, and and I'm not going to say the church because I don't, it's, there's a lot of good people. Yeah. When this happened, I created some waves and I have to say, when something happens to you, when you get zapped by God, dude, I didn't say I surfed the wave perfectly, because there was a lot of, I think they looked at me like, who the hell are you? And let's just say at the end, it didn't go too well. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 priests. 2 didn't want anything to do with me. 1 was like, I don't understand you, but I recognize something cool is going on. And 1 was really cool. And basically I was told that if I wasn't around the campus any longer, they wouldn't mind.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was. And the custodian wanted to know why I was there so much. And I'm like, I was praying. And they just, no, they were. So anyhow, but then again, I've read Saint Teresa of Avila and Brother Lawrence and so many others. And I realized if you really have an encounter with God and something goes a little squirrely, welcome to the club. Just roll with it. You're being perfected in love. Like, Lord.
Yeah. That's a really nice way of saying that you're suffering for doing good.
And to be honest, looking back on it now, because when I had this encounter, like, dude, my heart, I didn't know a stranger. Like, everybody opened up, and they were like, they freaked a little bit because they are older. and I'm coming in there just, I think you'll understand this. It's like when you walk into your favorite bar and you know everybody and you're just saying hi. And that's what I was like. And I realize if I had it all over to do again, I maybe could have stewarded it a little bit better. However, I don't regret it because there was a couple times when people opened up to me uh, that they were able to relieve like shame. And I'm like, did you talk to your priest? They're like, yeah, and I know the protocol and I know how it works. And I was cool with that. But there seems to be sometimes when you can communicate with a friend on a friend level and you deal with shame. And I'm like, no, dude, you're cool. And so I think some of the starchier ones just didn't get that. But but the cool thing is at the end, one of the priests who had to like admonish me or whatever, he's like, dude, I think you're cool, but this is what's coming down from above. And so I refuse to fight in a church. Even if I can win. And I could have won big. I actually told one of the guys on the board, smart guy, and Catholics like to cuss. I was taught, like, I'm Protestant, so thou shalt not cuss. He was like, that's effing wrong. And I'm like, yeah, Philip, you need to chill out, bro. So it hurt for a while. And I think I'm realizing if you have a real encounter, it will get tested. It's just, and it's nothing personal. It's just the way it happens. And so if you guys ever could pray for me, I would not mind that. I appreciate it. I'm like, if I have a choice between walking in love and knowing her name, I'd rather walk in love because she's okay. And this is a joke, and I think you'll understand it. I just don't want to be an idiot. Lord, don't let me be an idiot. And
Yeah.
on that final day, if I in the day of judgment, well, you're not an idiot. I'm like, yes, okay, we made it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you listening because having people you can interpret a mystery. It's like a dream. Like, okay, what do you guys think? And you can trust them. You know what I mean? Like, I've got an opinion, doesn't mean it's right. It's just so. But with you guys, I'm like, all right, we got a priest, Captain Jack, and a lady writer. So I think I think I might be okay. I have a confluence of opinions
Between the three of us, we should be able to figure something out.
Yeah.
One would think. Yeah.
No,
I know. Sally Joe talks about this all the time. Says one of the problems she has is, at her church, everything's public. Anything happens to you or not, it's a public. Like you have to tell the whole church, right? And and I think there's a great value to private confession.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I know this is on YouTube, but the number of people that are going to watch this that know us, that know me, like this is perfect because this is in a nice isolated setting where I can get.
Well, if you've already let it out in your own community, it really doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
And it's not like, you never do that, right? But having the availability to privately confess, especially, when your faith is tested or something, like, man, that's not something you want to do in front of your whole
right
church like that. So, I was just kind of contrasting that, right? Saying like, well, this is a thing that's available that we'll say not all the denominations have available, say.
Yeah,
right?
no.
Orthodox in particular have it, and it's a real handy thing to be able to use because it's just an extra tool, right? It's not, it doesn't change the game. except that it allows the game to be bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's also something nice about big churches where there's room in the back for people to just sneak in, 2 minutes after it started.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously I don't want that for everybody, but there's going to be a certain percentage of the population where that's, sneaking in 2 minutes after mass starts is going to be about all they can handle. It's nice to have
everywhere.
Nice to have a spot for the folks who they can like sneak in and like they don't need to sit on a committee or plan anything, but they can still have their very kind of I came up with this observation sitting at the back of a church during mass once while I was still a seminarian, and I just saw this fellow and he had really marked up skin, and he had I got the sense that he had probably lived a hard life.
Right.
He snuck into mass. Yeah, I was sitting in the back, which I never did. But today I was sitting in the back and he snuck into mass kind of 2 minutes after it started. And, it's like it was good that he had a spot.
Yeah.
Even in the back of the church, you're still inside.
Mm-hmm. I've gone to mass for years. It's going on 6 years before everything went sideways. And I went through RCIA. And the way this all came down is I work at doing landscaping, and some of the guys are pretty rough. I mean, you want the unsaved, I know where they work. And things were getting really rough. And I'm like, well, let me go talk to the priest and see what he says. And now there's a lot of good guys, but this guy, he was trying his best. I'm like, this is going down. I think I'm about to get something bad's about to go down. What do you think I ought to do? He goes, well, why don't you let God into the situation? I'm like, buddy, I'm about to take a hillbilly beating. Thanks a lot. I'll see you later. I go home unresolved, and that's when I have the dream. I wake up, boom, everything's changed. And I don't know if it's because I was in the environment. And there's a book by Jonathan Pageau. He goes, don't sleep on the beach, there are snakes. And it's a story about how it was a sociologist maybe who was studying a people group. And they said one day that there was a lady on an apparition showed up to the community, except that the sociologist couldn't see it. And he was wondering if it wasn't because he wasn't part of that community, he couldn't click. And part of me wonders if the only reason I did have this, because I wasn't looking for it, I was just looking for help. And I was up a creek, is that maybe because I was in this community, I had softened to some things. And maybe this happened because I think even if I had not had the 6 years and the RCIA and all that, I know good and evil, and I know this was good, so I would have woke up going, okay, thanks, whoever you are, but I might not have been able to process it or been even willing to process it talking with you guys. So I feel like I'm doing theoretical physics and talking about string theory and quantum fields and, like I'm looking for a definitive answer and there ain't one just yet.
Yeah.
But you said, I forget, and I can't, no, I had my eyes done recently and I can see better, but it's tiny. Is Valerie?
Yes, Valerie. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I wasn't sure you were
No,
asking me.
you're fine. No,
Okay.
you're fine. Because you've all said things that have helped. because you made a comment that kind of struck me. It's helping me process this. So I don't have I don't have a 2 + 2 = 4 answer,
Mm.
but there's something working on my theory, or I don't even know how to put this in words properly, what I'm doing. But you guys probably can see it better than I can.
Well, we're all
Well,
kind
or
of
at least,
works in progress, so we all have different things that we're dealing with, vices and virtues and foibles and strengths and weaknesses and stuff. And
Strange
yeah,
things bubbling out of our unconscious
yep,
happens to all
sure.
of us.
yeah,
Yeah, but the nice thing about is once you transcend arithmetic, you might end
Mhm.
up in a world where 2 + 2 can get you to 4 million, and that's
Well,
not a bad
yes,
place to be.
exactly. And that's the new math, and actually that's the correct math. Have you ever heard of Paul Kingsnorth or Martin Shaw?
Both of them,
I've,
I've encountered their work. Yeah,
I've heard
Okay.
yeah.
the
No, I
names.
actually
Yeah,
I got to
Um,
listen to Paul Kingsnorth at the Symbolic World Summit, and afterwards I said that we
okay.
needed to sign consent forms to hear him tell a fairy tale because, like, you gotta be informed consent when you're gonna do that to another man.
Oh, he's there. Those guys have. I have a similar kind of testimony. You come out, you're pagan to Christ, and there was a moment when he was talking with. I think his name's Neil from Grail Country, um, and Neil. They were kind of teasing out what faith is and the parables. And Martin Shaw was talking about how if you need money in the real world, you work for it. He goes, but in the economy of God, you go fishing and open up the mouth of the first fish you catch.
mm,
And I'm like, oh, that is so cool. Because the way he put it, it's, and so when you said 1 + 1 = 1,000,000, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm dealing with. There's normal has left the building and I'm cool with it. And I'm just trying to figure, it's not a labyrinth in a bad way, but it's still a labyrinth of like, okay, we're not in familiar territory and everything's changed. And I hope I never leave it. And I would rather spend eternity trying to figure it out and not know and enjoy it than figuring out and have the mystery gone and the joy of it just split. I'm like, that's crap. So
There's
anyhow,
there's a cathedral in France that actually has a labyrinth on the floor. It's not in the middle. It's kind of off to the
okay.
edge or the back or someplace. And it's like it's basically just a spiral, like a black and white spiral coming in.
Mhm.
And the
Okay.
practice is that you walk along, I think probably the dark until you get to the middle, and then you turn around and start following the light there.
Okay.
You may ask, why would you do something like that? And the answer is, I don't fully know, but it does probably just change things up enough for something new to happen, and maybe it will
Well,
actually happen once you're in the middle. But yeah,
yeah.
but going through that change process on that level is kind of unpleasant.
That's the participation with the pattern in a
Ah,
way.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
If you just look at a pattern, that's one thing.
Mhm.
If you walk a
Mhm.
pattern, that's another. That's why pilgrimages are important. I wish
Mhm.
Ted were here. He'd tell you about the pilgrimage, or Corey. All right, like these things are important because they're different modes of engaging with the words, for example,
Okay.
or the sermons or whatever it is. It doesn't even matter,
Mhm.
right? There are different ways of engaging in the world, and to use some Vervaeke language,
Mhm.
that's the reciprocal narrowing versus the reciprocal opening, right? That one-to-one relationship, that 2 + 2 = 4, is
Mhm.
very linear and discrete. Those are the terms that
Right.
we use in our when we
Right.
talk about the 4 P's of information. right?
Mhm.
But that's also a very literary or descriptive way of engaging with the
Okay.
world, right?
Okay.
The symbolic way of engaging with the world, right, which is
Mhm.
more participatory and poetic.
Mhm.
When you do that type of engagement, what changes is that's reciprocally opening in the sense of
Okay. Yeah.
religion.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
it's one thing to say attend a church service. It's another
Uh-huh.
thing to attend the same church service after having walked there for 2 days. That's
Right.
gonna change
Sure.
everything automatically.
No, I got you. No, I, I like this. This last part's really helping me understand what I'm doing already. It is to symbolically participate with this encounter. It's not
Right.
literal. And I like that. It's more like surfing than, not that I'm a
Yeah.
surfer, but I'm like, you follow the wave. You
Yep.
figure out where it's going and
Yep.
try not to get tubed. And that's
Yep.
kind of it's all right, cool. Listen, I've appreciate this, and I appreciate you guys spending time and letting me process this thing. Uh, it's it helps just to know I'm on the right track. Just I'm on the right trail. Just keep doing it. I do appreciate it quite a bit. So my battery's low physically and or I mean my camera battery's low and also I'm just tired and I got to go to thumb
Yeah.
beat.
Well,
So
Ron, thanks for signing on.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Very
that you
nice to
came
meet you.
here, and your story is very interesting. And I'll make sure to say a few prayers for you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and you guys are fun. So I'll be back. We'll skate on the thin ice and see what happens.
Yep.
Alrighty,
All right. Have a
alrighty.
good night. Good
Good
to meet
night.
you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Oh my! You just
That's
put the
wild.
link. Yeah, you just put the link out there, and you see what you get, right?
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low down for a catch there.
Yeah.
No,
That's
I'm really fascinated by Capax now. A little bit of Latin here, and it's sort of that the potential side of infinity rather than the actual side of infinity.
Right. Yeah, with the roominess. Right.
Yeah, the ability, the capacity to receive something,
And
rather than
that's how the math geeks talk about it too.
right.
Even though
Yeah,
they're
so that
rediscovering it.
hotel thing, that hotel thing is it's really funny, right? Because it's like, okay, you have infinitely many guests in this hotel, and you want to give all of them a room, plus also have the capacity to give infinitely more guests a room without having to move anybody. Well,
Right.
what do? Well, you just put all of your guests on the first bus and the even numbers. You have infinitely many even numbers, put them in, and then you've got all the odd numbers available for whatever guests show up after that. Nobody has to move a room.
That's
It's
what they
just
do.
like, and like it makes sense, but we don't actually have the capacity to think about that because infinite numbers, infinite quantity
Doesn't work in our brain.
doesn't work in
Right.
our brain, but we can play with the idea. It's so
Well,
weird.
and they rediscovered it, and they don't realize that because they're all dumb. But whatever. I mean, at least they rediscovered it, I guess. But yeah, I math people are just whatever. It's sad. It's sad to watch them struggle with something that has been known about for thousands of years. But I guess that's what they have to go through.
Yeah, they do all this work and they climb up the top of the mountain and they find philosophers and theologians who've been sitting there for centuries.
Exactly. I wish I had the book. I should, of course, have the book when it got stolen from me. So yeah, I wish I had the book. Then I could reference it better, obviously. But nope, it's all gone.
Yeah. But this whole thing about the capacity was also something that Thomas Aquinas had to deal with when he was talking about infinity with God, because I guess in Aristotle, especially, he treats infinity most often under this aspect of, infinite potential, infinite capacity hasn't yet been realized yet, rather than, the ability to do anything undifferentiated by any particular thing. So he had to defend assigning infinity as one of the qualities of God in the 13th century against a potential Aristotelian critique. But now you all know that with me. So
Yay.
Thanks. I think.
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Okay.
Mark. Yeah.
Feels
It
like
makes-
a curve.
It makes creation work, and I know you're a big creation enjoyer.
I don't need to make it work. It's already working for me, but like butterflies, dragonflies today, a lizard. I'm
Cool.
cool. Like me and creation get along just fine.
No, but creation can receive whatever forms the Lord gives to it. It's
Even lizards?
infinitely capable of receiving whatever the Lord wants to place into it. So
Right.
So that's great. That means there isn't any constraint on the divine action except the ones he puts on himself. That's a
Excellent.
very, very useful thing to
Good
know.
news. Good news indeed. Better news than the mere good news.
Oh,
Long day.
yes, a long day of doing everything that I enjoy.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Said mass. We had the Moby Dick Book Club also on this channel. If you're a fan,
Wow.
it's all
That
been
was good.
recorded, and yeah, listening to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young around a campfire. So
Very cool.
Campfires will tire you out. That's for sure.
yeah.
Let's see how to.
So Valerie's excited about the Writers of Meaning.
Yep.
And Mark is excited about his YouTube channel, and I'm excited about the prospect of going to bed soon. So I think
Very
we're going to
cool.
wrap this stream up a little bit early. We've had a delightful
Yeah.
discussion. Hopefully Ron shows up again and we get to continue to explain his dreams to him. So
Well, hopefully he'll watch my live stream from 2 weeks ago when I talked about our knowledge engine model, and that will really make a lot of sense to him, I think.
well, hopefully. So anyway, good night and God bless you all.
Good night. God bless.